Picanha has become one of those staple steak cuts that every YouTuber has cooked, but it seems like everyone pretty much does the same thing. In this video, I'm going to show you guys my favorite way to cook picanha with a few new cooking techniques that you can apply to other steaks. Additionally, I'll show you how to make a very iconic sauce, but in two different ways, and how the technique in which you use can significantly change the end product. With that being said, let's get cooking. This is a Black Angus picanha that I found at Wild Fork. Not a sponsor. When selecting a picanha, there's a few things that I'm looking for. I want a piece that weighs between 3.5 and 4 pounds, has full fat coverage over the top so that each bite has some of that delicious fat. And when I flip it over, I just want to make sure that there aren't any deep gashes, kind of like those gashes that you sometimes get in briskets. If you find a good piece like this one, there's really not that much to trim, but there are a few small things that I want to take care of. I'm going to take off this little small piece of fat, and I'm also going to take off this little bit of silver skin that's on the side. One thing to make sure you're able to see is direction of the grain. Later on, we're going to be cutting this picanha into steaks, and when we do so, we're going to be cutting it with the grain. Just keep that in mind for now. We'll talk about that more later. Right now, I'm going to season it with coarse black pepper and kosher salt. I know traditionally picanha is served with just coarse salt, but I like the floral flavor the pepper brings, especially with the smoke. And as you can see, I'm seasoning with black pepper first and then following up with the salt. Since the kosher salt has a much finer grain, it'll cover the entire surface of the picanha, and if you try to add the pepper right afterwards, some of it won't stick. But if you start with a pepper that's more coarse, there will still be enough space in between the pepper grains for the salt to fall through. Or you can salt first, wait 2 to 3 minutes for it to dissolve and get tacky, then add your pepper. But you do you. After seasoning, I'm going to put this in the fridge to chill. You can dry brine this for maybe 2 to 3 hours if you want to prep ahead, but I wouldn't recommend doing it overnight since it's not that big of a piece of meat. And also dry brining overnight can leave a more cured flavor, which isn't what I'm looking for this cook. While this chills in the fridge, let's get the fire started. For this cook, we're going to be cold smoking this picanha. So, to start the fire, begin with a small amount of Fogo charcoal, take a piece of Korean newspaper for extra flavor, and wrap it around a chud snake nest for the ultimate flavor bomb. To give the fire a little extra juice, take your pink portable fan and bring these coals to life. Find a heavy dense log to lay on top. If one side has some frayed pieces, put that side face down over the coals to help the log catch. For this version of cold smoking, you don't really want it to be burning and bringing the temperature up like we would for smoking sausage. What we're going for is a really low temperature with a lot of smoke for about 2 hours. Our goal is not to cook this picanha in any way at this point. It's really just to get an extra level of smoke that I feel like I'm often missing when cooking steaks in the traditional methods. Since it's going to be cold smoking for a good amount of time, it's important to keep it in the fridge until the smoker is ready to go. Close that door and don't look at it for a really long time. While the picanha smokes, we're going to make a variation of an Italian salsa verde. To make it, you'll need 25 grams or about 2 cups of basil, 10 grams or about half a cup of parsley, the juice of half a lemon, 13 grams or 1 tablespoon of capers, 25 grams or 2 tablespoons of Dijon mustard, 7 to 8 grams or 1 anchovy fillet, diced shallots that we'll be using later, 1 clove of garlic, and to this we'll be adding about 100 grams of olive oil. One additional step that I like to take when I make salsa verde is blanching the herbs to give the sauce a vibrant color. To blanch your herbs, you'll need 2 things. You're going to need an ice bath and a boiling pot of water. Drop the herbs into the boiling water for no more than 30 seconds. Straight from the boiling water, immediately drop into your ice. Take the herbs out in small bunches and squeeze out as much water as you possibly can. If you try to wring out the water in one big chunk, you'll most likely have moisture still at the center. So take your time or you'll end up with a soupy sauce. After you squeeze out as much water as you can, I like to separate the herbs and fluff them up a bit. I think it helps to blend better during the next step. Into your blender, add in your blanched herbs, garlic, caper, anchovies, Dijon, and lemon juice. Give these ingredients an initial blitz to get them all into more uniform pieces. Then on a low speed, drizzle in about 100 grams of olive oil. Once all the pieces are incorporated, bring the speed up to get it into a very smooth, velvety texture. Even though you have all these savory, salty ingredients like the anchovy and capers, make sure you taste for salt. The salt is going to bring out other flavors like the lemon juice and the Dijon. Give it one more blitz and your sauce is ready to go. It's a really fun color and super smooth, but it lacks a bit of texture. I'm going to finish the dish with these lightly pickled shallots that we diced earlier and also some lemon zest. Now that we have our salsa verde finished and the picanha is still smoking, let's introduce the sponsor of today's video, Cometeer. I'm super excited to introduce today's sponsor because no joke, I've been waiting for them to reach out to me for a really long time because I actually like it a lot. Cometeer is the only coffee in the world that's flash frozen to lock in its peak freshness, aroma, and flavor. Unlike when you buy coffee beans or coffee from coffee shops, sometimes you have no idea how long those beans have been sitting around, sometimes months, if not years. And with all that time, the beans get stale and erodes the flavor. But with Cometeer, your coffee stays at its peak freshness for up to 3 years in the freezer. Cometeer sources high quality beans from roasters all around the world, producing incredibly unique coffees that are hard to come by. And Cometeer capsules are made from 100% recyclable aluminum, not disposable plastic waste. For the first time ever, you can make a super fresh cup of coffee from home with no machines required. Plus, it's delivered to your door for about $2 a cup for the ultimate convenience. I'm a simple guy who enjoys a hot cup of coffee in the morning, and with Cometeer, and honestly, it couldn't be any easier. Simply peel back the top of the capsule, drop the frozen puck in a mug, add 6 to 8 ounces of hot water to melt, give it a stir, and add milk or milk alternatives if you like. And on those days where I'm cooking outside when it's really hot and I'm just looking for a cool, refreshing iced coffee, Cometeer's got you covered as well. Just let your capsule defrost fully and you can even leave it in the fridge overnight. Fill a glass with 6 to 8 ounces of water and ice, pour the melted capsule on top and give it a mix. The coffees are smooth, delicious, and each one has a distinct flavor profile and aroma that you can experience based off your preferred level of roast. These 4 coffees are made from a mix of medium to dark roast, which is my preference. So if you're ready to elevate your coffee drinking experience from top roasters around the world, but want to do it from the convenience of your own home, let me help you out. Use my link in the description below and go to cometeer.com/JoeYim or use the discount code JoeYim at checkout to receive 15 free cups of coffee with your first subscription. If you love coffee like I do and like to try different varieties, definitely give it a shot and let me know what you think. I don't think you'll be disappointed. Thanks again to Cometeer for sponsoring this video. After about 2 hours of cold smoking, this is what a picanha looks like. There's not that much change, but the color of the meat and fat are a bit darker. But as you can see from how it moves, this thing is still very much raw. The biggest difference is something that I can't share through video, but it smells like a campfire. This extra step is going to bring an extra level of flavor to your picanha. Now let's cut these into steaks. I'm super excited for this part because I'm getting to use this beautiful slicer that my cousin Gideon gave me. Now, do you need a knife like this? Absolutely not. But is it fun and cool to try new knives? Absolutely. To cut this picanha into steaks, we're going to flip it over so that you can identify the grain. I see that the grain is going in this direction, and I want to make sure that I'm cutting with the grain for now. That way, when we serve the steaks later, we can cut against the grain to get a more tender bite. But before we start cutting, give yourself some guidelines to have evenly thick steaks. Measure twice and cut once. I'm cutting them in about 2-inch pieces so that we can cook them to the desired internal temperature that we're looking for. As I'm slicing, I'm also getting a perfume of smoke, which is really interesting. The smoke penetrated more than I expected, and aesthetically, I think it just looks really fun. There's a nice contrast of color and texture from the meat on the inside that has that ruby red color to the white fat cap and the outer edge that's seasoned and has gotten most of the smoke. It's almost kind of like Neapolitan ice cream. Before we take the steak outside, I'm going to season the sides with salt. Even though we seasoned it generously earlier, remember, we only seasoned the outside. And I only had it in the fridge for maybe 40 minutes before throwing it on the smoker, so it didn't get that proper dry brine to season it all the way through. Now that it's properly seasoned, let's take it outside. Again, start with Fogo charcoal and a flavor bomb combo with a Korean newspaper. This is really the secret to why the steak is so good, because you're using Korean newspaper twice. I also pulled out a small split from the firebox to get additional flavor on these steaks. Light the flavor bomb and again use your pink fan and get this fire ripping hot. Once the coals are ready, spread them out and fluff them up a little bit. When grilling, make sure your coals aren't all crammed together. Even though the vents are wide open at the bottom, air still needs to be able to pass through the coals in order to stay hot. To grill our picanha steaks, we're going to be moving it a lot. And I know you've heard this before, but we're going to be doing it even more than a traditional method. Start by searing off the fat side first. Picanha has such a thick fat cap, and when rendered properly, it has a sweet, unctuous bite, similar to bone marrow, and that I want included in every bite. Hitting the fat cap first is going to ensure that we give it enough time to render, as it'll continue to cook as we finish the rest of the steak. For the rest of the cook, flip the steak every 20 seconds over really high heat. But after you've given 20 seconds per side, move the steak to the cool side of the grill and let it relax. Let the surface of the steak cool down so it's no longer sizzling. Give it about 30 seconds. I like using this method because it allows you to cook over really high heat to develop that steakhouse-like crust, but without worrying about getting it too charred because it's sitting on one side for too long. And it gives your steak time to relax as the internal temperature will climb up more gradually. I know what some of you guys might be thinking. This is gonna take forever, or here Joe goes again, making things more complicated than it needs to be. I promise you, it takes about the same amount of time, if not faster. The crust on the outside will be more pronounced and the doneness of the steak will still be great. But like any new cooking technique, it's gonna take some practice to master. I'm always gonna be chasing after that perfect bite in each dish. Now that our steaks are done, let's bring it inside and see how we did. Using the beautiful slicer, let's get a cross section of this picanha. You can see how evenly done it is. And since we started with a fat cap first, it's rendered all the way through. There was a lot of time spent on everything that's on this plate, from cold smoking to grilling and scratch making the sauce. And with all that work, was it worth it? Honestly, I thought it was good, but not great. The picanha has great flavor, but it's a little chewy. And as much as I'm a rare to medium rare steak eater, I think picanha is one of those steaks that might benefit from cooking for a little bit longer. I also think the salsa verde, flavor-wise, is solid, but I'm not gonna lie. This is not the sauce texture or color that I was looking for. I think this dish is really good, but I don't think it's perfect yet. Picanha could have been cooked just a little bit better. And the salsa verde, I think it's really good. The only thing that I'm looking at it that I'm disappointed is I just want it to be a little bit more green. And so that's something I'm gonna have to play around with that myself. My initial plan was just to end this video here and just tell you guys what I would fix. But it didn't sit right with me to finish with a dish that I wasn't happy with. So I decided to start the dish all over again. Let's remake the salsa verde. All the ingredients and the amount of everything is exactly the same. The only difference is how we're gonna build this sauce. This time, we're gonna start with the blanched herbs and add all the oil in at the same time. Blend it together until it gets that dark green color that I was looking for earlier. I think the problem was adding the Dijon and drizzling the oil in small amounts at a time. By doing that, I think it emulsified kind of like a mayo, which gave it that smooth texture. Once I got the color that I was looking for, I added in the garlic and anchovy to break it up into uniform pieces. Once incorporated, move it to a separate bowl. And as you can see, this sauce has way more texture. Now add in some roughly chopped capers and the Dijon mustard. At this point, we're gonna fold it in by hand. By doing this, all the ingredients can still come together, but without incorporating too much air into the sauce like we did with the blender. The other version isn't bad, but this is the color and texture that I wanted for this dish. But for those of you guys at home who want to recreate this dish, now you have two options. The only thing you have to decide is what version of the salsa verde do you want to recreate. Like we did earlier, I diced some shallots. Try to dice them as small as you can so you can be generous with it. It adds a bit of brightness and texture that I'm looking for with the salsa verde. To pickle them, I poured some sherry vinegar over them and let them sit for about 30 minutes. If you don't have sherry vinegar, you can use apple cider vinegar with some salt and some sugar for a sweet, salty pop. Now for the picanha. This time when we're cooking the steaks, I'm gonna be cooking multiple steaks at a time to practice this new technique. I think this method actually is perfect for and works better when you're cooking a bunch of steaks at a time, because you're able to constantly rotate the steaks, which has the built-in rest time in between searing. I'm also cooking this on a much hotter fire because I didn't get the crust I was looking for last time. And when I say we're cooking on a much hotter fire, this is what I'm talking about. Keep it moving, let it rest, keep developing the crust, and repeat until you get the internal temperature that you're looking for. Also, to show the difference in tenderness of a medium rare picanha compared to a medium, I cooked a few to different internal temperatures. Now that we have two different internal temperatures and got that crust that we're looking for, let's take our steaks inside and see the difference. Underneath the lights, you can see that the char and the crust on this one is significantly better than last time with a much hotter fire. The first steak that we're gonna slice into is that medium rare like we did last time. And as we cut into it, it still looks really nice and juicy and has a great crust, and the fat is perfectly rendered. The second steak is cooked to a medium. Same as the other, as great crust, and even with a thicker fat cap, it's nicely rendered. But when we put these side to side, you can tell that the medium seems a little bit more relaxed and the fibers are separating a bit more. I've never done this with steak slices before, but let's give it a pull test. The tension on this medium rare is pretty extreme. It stretches like a rubber band until eventually just tears apart, but required quite a bit of force to do so. The flavor of this picanha is still really good, but as you can guess, quite chewy like last time. Now the slice of the medium. To be honest, it surprised me how easy it tore apart compared to the other. The flavor is just as good as the medium rare, but significantly more tender. The smokiness and tenderness of the picanha, the dark green vibrant salsa verde that has an earthy flavor from all the herbs, capers, and anchovies, but balanced with the sharp, sweet, acidic crunch from the diced shallots. Even though both dishes have the exact same ingredients, it looks like two completely different dishes. And I hope that this video gives you another fun way to cook picanha and also helps you to be okay with making mistakes while cooking. Having to remake dishes is part of cooking and the only way to get better. While much of the food on the internet today is entertainment, I miss the days when you learn a recipe that's been tested and not made just for shock value. As cooks, our instinct should always be, how can I make this dish better? And I hope that this video encourages you to do so.